20.79% nationwide and 10.67% abroad, stressing that these figures are provisional. In Syria, the death toll from Thursday's bombing at a cafe in central Damascus has risen to 9, with 20 others injured. And the national football team has been eliminated from the 2026 FIFA World Cup after losing 2-0 to Switzerland in the round of 32, with captain Riyad Mahrez announcing his retirement from international football. Those were the headlines, and now the news in detail from Radio Algeria International. First in our news, the turnout in Algeria's 2nd of July legislative elections has reached 20.79% nationwide and at the close of voting on Thursday. The announcement was made yesterday by Acting President of the National Independent Election Authority, Hani Karim Khalfan, who added that voter turnout among the Algerian diaspora stood at 10.67%. Speaking to the press, Khalfan said that 4,962,432 voters cast their ballots inside Algeria, while 91,170 Algerian citizens living abroad participated in the vote. He stressed that these figures are provisional, noting that voting was still underway in several countries, including the United States, where polling stations in cities such as Washington remain open until 1 a.m. Friday Algerian time. As a result, turnout figures are expected to increase as reports continue to be received from electoral coordinators in Algeria and abroad. Khalfan added that provisional election results will be announced once the final polling station reports have been received from all provinces and overseas voting centers. Under Algerian law, Ani has 72 hours after receiving the last official report to announce the provisional results. All electoral documents, including appeals, will be forwarded to the Constitutional Court, which will rule on any complaint and officially proclaim the final results of the legislative elections. Let's hear the details from the interim president of Ani Karim Khalfan in this short BS.
لا بأس أن نذكر بعدد الهيئة الناخبة 23 مليون و
Let's recall that the total number of registered voters is 23,872,756 voters. The number of those who cast their ballots is 4,962,433, representing 20.79%. This is followed by the number of registered voters abroad, 854,285, with 91,170 who cast their ballots, with a turnout of 10.67%. I'd like to point out that these figures are provisional, as they are based on the timely count at the polling stations. The process is ongoing, and we are continuing to monitor the situation in real time.
Meanwhile, President Abdelmadjid Tebboune welcomed the smooth conduct of the legislative elections, which he stated took place under good conditions. He also emphasized that the era of quotas and any undermining of the will of the people expressed at the ballot box is over. In response to questions from journalists after casting his vote, the president stated that no candidate or party complained about fraud or electoral manipulation, assuring that the law is being applied with all necessary rigor which will likely deter anyone who might consider breaking it. Let's listen to the President of the Republic.
أعتقد المرحلة هذه تجاوزناها منذ زمان خلاص يعني كل الجزائريات والجزائريين متيقنين باللي مرحلة الكوطا ومرحلة المس بالصوت تاع الشعب انتهى خلاص وهذه تقريبا كل الانتخابات اللي مرت ما سمعناش ولا مترشح ولا حزب ولا يشكي من تزوير ولا من سرقة الأصوات نتاعو. إذا نطمن الناس كل اللي قانون راح يطبق بصفة اللي تخلي كل واحد يخمم مليح قبل ما يخترق القانون.
Still with the domestic file, acting on behalf of President Abdelmadjid Tebboune, Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf has paid a visit to Cotonou, Benin, to strengthen bilateral relations between the two countries. Mariam Barshid tells us more details.
During the visit, Mr. Attaf held talks with his Beninese counterpart, Corinne Amaury Brunet, to examine the state of cooperation and explore ways to deepen the long-standing ties of friendship and solidarity between the two countries. The two ministers reaffirmed the shared commitment of both leaders to elevate the Algerian-Beninese partnership particularly in the fields of energy, agriculture, the pharmaceutical industry and training. They also stressed the importance of activating bilateral cooperation mechanisms by convening as soon as possible the next session of the Algerian-Beninese Joint Commission and the inaugural meeting of the Business Council with the aim of boosting economic trade and investment relations in line with the opportunities available in both countries. The discussions also highlighted the need for continued consultation and coordination in regional and international forums, particularly within the African Union. On regional and international issues, the ministers exchanged views on developments in the Sahel-Saharan region and the Middle East, reaffirming the importance of enhancing regional security and stability. They also underscored the need to uphold the principles of international law and the United Nations charters, emphasizing dialogue and peaceful means as the only path to resolving crises and conflicts.
Shifting now to the international arena in Palestine, where 7 Palestinians were injured, one of them critically, in an Israeli airstrike in the Nusayrat refugee camp in central Gaza. The wounded were transferred to Al-Auda Medical Complex in Nusayrat for treatment. Meanwhile, Palestinian health authorities reported that the death toll from Israel's military offensive in Gaza since October 7, 2023 has risen to 73,074, with 173,537 others injured, the majority of them women and children. Over the past 24 hours alone, 4 Palestinians were killed and 12 wounded, while many victims are still believed to be trapped beneath the rubble. Lebanese President Joseph Aoun has reaffirmed that Lebanon will not cede a single inch of its territory to the Israeli occupying authorities despite a ceasefire framework agreement signed on June 26 aimed at achieving a lasting peace. He said that Beirut has decided to pursue negotiations to secure a full Israeli withdrawal from Lebanese territory while accusing Israeli occupying forces of continuing their attacks in violation of the ceasefire. Meanwhile, the Lebanese Ministry of Health said the death toll from the Israeli offensive since March 2nd has risen to 4,298, with 12,196 people injured. The death toll from Thursday's bombing at a cafe in central Damascus has risen to 9, with 20 others injured. The explosion occurred at a cafe on Al-Nasr Street near the Palace of Justice in the busy Hijaz district of the Syrian capital. Syrian security officials said the blast was caused by an explosive device planted inside the cafe. Authorities have launched an investigation to determine the motive for the attack and identify those responsible. The victims were taken to nearby hospitals for treatment. Iran has begun 3 days of state funeral ceremonies for former Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, whose coffin arrived in Tehran 4 months after he was killed in a joint Israeli-American strike. Authorities expect millions of mourners to attend what is expected to be the largest funeral in the country's history. President Masoud Pezeshkian paid tribute alongside senior officials, while Pakistan's Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif, whose country has helped mediate contact between Iran and the United States, also attended the ceremonies. Delegations from around 30 countries are expected, although no European leaders have been invited. And the World Health Organization has launched a clinical trial in the Democratic Republic of the Congo to evaluate 2 potential treatments for the Bundibugyo strain of the Ebola virus as the country's latest outbreak continues to spread. Mariam Brasha has more.
The Partners trial, led by the Congolese National Institute for Biomedical Research with WHO support, is testing the monoclonal antibody MBP-134 and the antiviral Remdesivir, administered either separately or in combination. The first patient has already been enrolled, and participants will receive comprehensive medical care and close monitoring. The WHO also granted emergency use authorization for the first molecular diagnostic test for the Bundibugyo strain, for which no approved vaccine or treatment currently exists. Since the outbreak was declared in mid-May, health authorities have recorded 1,406 confirmed cases and 438 deaths, a fatality rate of 31.2%. The epidemic centered in Ituri province has recently reached the northeastern city of Kisangani, while neighboring Uganda has reported 20 cases, including 2 deaths. WHO Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus said the outbreak is expanded at an average of 38 new confirmed cases per day. All the contact tracing and treatment capacity have improved. Around 650 treatment beds are currently available, with additional capacity being deployed. The Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention warned that the outbreak is very serious and is progressing more rapidly than previous Ebola epidemics in the region. Its Director General, Jean Kaseya, stressed the need to contain the virus quickly to prevent a prolonged crisis. Response efforts continue to face major challenges, including insecurity, attacks on health facilities, community mistrust, and concurrent cholera and measles outbreaks, placing additional strain on the country's health system.
And still in Africa, the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees has said that one of its 8 trucks carrying humanitarian supplies in Sudan was struck by a drone in the Darfur region, destroying 50 tons of relief items intended for vulnerable civilians in Kordofan. According to the UN spokesperson Stéphane Dujarric, the driver escaped unharmed, but his shipment, which included blankets, mattresses, and solar lamps, was completely destroyed. Meanwhile, the EU or the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, warned of a worsening humanitarian and human rights catastrophe in El Ubaid, the capital of North Kordofan, where civilians continue to bear the brunt of fighting between the Sudanese army and the rapid support forces. And finally, the national football team was eliminated from the 2026 FIFA World Cup after losing 2-0 to Switzerland in the round of 32 on Thursday night at BC Palace Stadium in Vancouver, Canada. Switzerland took the lead in the 10th minute through Breel Imbolo before doubling its advantage early in the second half with a goal from Dan Ndoye in the 46th minute. The Swiss side will face the winner of the Colombia-Ghana match in the round of 16. That fixture is scheduled for Friday night at Arrowhead Stadium in Kansas City. Algeria had reached the knockout stage after finishing among the 8 best third-placed teams in the group phase. Following the match, Captain Riyad Mahrez announced his retirement from international football. "This was my last appearance for the national team, my final match," Mahrez told reporters after the game. The 35-year-old said Algeria's goal had been to reach the round of 16 and admitted that defensive mistakes proved costly, while highlighting the team's successful progression from the group stage as a positive takeaway. Mahrez made his international debut in 2014 and ends his Algerian career with 119 caps, 40 goals and 44 assists. With this, we come to the end of this news bulletin. Time now for our weekly programs. We'll meet you again tomorrow. Thank you.
The museums of the world are the window into the history and creativity of a particular country. It is here where visitors are able to explore the past generation and the development of the country and marvel at the historic relics and artifacts that stand as a reminder to these ancient times. Algeria, the National Museum of Antiquities in Algiers is one of the most fascinating and comprehensive museums in the country. It is where the past meets the present and where Algeria comes to life. What makes the National Museum of Antiquities so unique is the fact that it does not only showcase pieces and history of Algiers, but has a wonderful collection that has been sourced from towns and cities across the country. Having displays from around Algeria gives visitors a comprehensive look at the country. One location making the National Museum of Antiquities a very popular attraction and educational tool. Some of the rare artifacts that visitors can look forward to viewing are the totemic warriors from the Libyan period, ivory carvings, and a breathtaking coin collection. The sculptures that are located throughout the museum are magnificent and include the 3rd century child with an eagle, a sculpture from Cherchell, and wonderful bronzes. The museum is also home to an extensive art collection, ancient mosaics, and dozens of priceless manuscripts. The National Museum of Antiquities has an exclusive collection of exhibits and offers an extraordinary opportunity to explore the cultures, traditions, and age-old beauty of this fascinating country. When in Algiers, visitors are recommended to add the museum to their list of activities, as they will not be disappointed at the wonders that are contained within the walls of the National Museum of Antiquities. From the capital Algiers to the western city of Tlemcen, the town of Tlemcen is noted for its flourishing vineyards and olive plantations, as well as its carpet, textile, and leather handicrafts. With its centuries of fascinating history and rich culture, a blend of Berber, Arab, French, and Andalusian, Tlemcen is a popular tourist destination. Visitors to the town may want to take some time to explore the Tlemcen Museum, which provides an interesting overview of the history and culture of this picturesque Algerian town and surrounding areas. Originally housed in the Sidi Bel Hassan Mosque in Tlemcen, the museum collection has been moved to a college building which was built in 1905. The Tlemcen Museum occupies 2 floors of the building, and the collection includes a variety of coins and artifacts from the Almoravid 11th century, Marinid and Zayyanid dynasties. The Marinid and Zayyanid dynasties struggled for domination of the area in the 13th and early 14th century, each taking and losing rulership a number of times until Tlemcen came under Ottoman rule in the 16th century. Following a decade of resistance, Tlemcen succumbed to the French in 1842. Carved epitaphs from the royal tomb of Boudbil, the last Moorish king of Granada, who died in Tlemcen in 1494, are among the treasures to be seen at the Tlemcen Museum, as well as a marble standard cubit measure bearing the date 1328. Also displayed at the museum are some amazing oil paintings by Algerian artist Abdel Halim Hamesh dating back to the 1940s. Located in the oasis town of Beni Abbas, the capital city of the Saura area of Algeria, the Beni Abbas Museum houses an impressive display of desert fauna, fossils, and traditional arts and crafts, such as carpets, wall hangings, ceramic items, wood carvings, and jewelry. The museum, which is supported by the Saharan Research Center, displays an extensive range of different types of dates, one of the mainstay crops of oasis towns and villages in Algeria. Ancient local legend claims that the spring which waters this lush oasis came about as a miracle. It is said that a traveler pushed his walking stick into the ground, declaring that if he should die in this place, water would come out of the ground. He apparently died the following night, possibly due to lack of water, and the spring began to flow, continuing to do so to this day. The town of Beni Abbas is a popular tourist destination, and the Beni Abbas Museum provides fascinating insight into the history and culture of the town and its people. Certainly, it is well worth a visit when exploring this charming Algerian town and its surroundings.
Welcome to our weekly program Influential Figures. Today we'll shed light on famous artist Beya Mahieddine. Beya Mahieddine, whose real name is Fatma Haddad, was born on December 12, 1931 in Burj Al Kifan, east of Algiers. She began drawing and painting from a young age, drawing inspiration from her childhood imagination, creating a universe often represented by women with almond-shaped eyes surrounded by fabulous birds, imaginary flowers, or instruments of music. Her self-taught style is considered by critics as a mixture of surrealistic, naive, and modern, although she never self-identified with a particular style or movement. Her work was fresh in how it resisted Western classifications and was deeply personal, rooted in her childhood and her home. Her works are largely comprised of paintings, although she has many works in pottery as well. An orphan at the age of 5 in 1947, Baya Mahieddine was under the informal guardianship of a French woman living in Algeria named Marguerite Camina, who was well connected in the literary and art worlds. Marguerite was visited by the French art dealer Aimé Maite, who was the first to present Baya's work to the public in a solo exhibition at his gallery in Paris. Baya was 16 at the time when her exhibition gained notice from renowned writer André Breton, who wrote the preface to the catalogue of the show. Her work went on to be presented in various exhibitions in France and Algeria and has appeared on Algerian postage stamps. Instead of following the typically Western models of art production that were being taught at the time, the young Baya drew on her own personal experiences and imaginings. Alongside the traditional tribal art of Algeria, her clay figures are said to have inspired the fluid forms and figures she painted, giving her works their unique aesthetic that was so influential to artists like Picasso and Matisse. By the time she was 16, Mahieddine had her first exhibition in Paris. This is where her influence on artists such as Picasso is first noticed. Picasso's interest and fascination with African tribal art and masks in particular is well known. His graphic cubic style is attributed in part to his curiosity in traditional African forms of representation, at that time presented in Europe in the form of curios and artifacts rather than artworks. Mahieddine was an exception to this. She was not creating tribal curiosities, but allowing her environment and imagination to shape her work. Inspired by her spontaneity and a natural talent, Picasso invited her to work with him in 1948. She was the elusive, untaught artist that gave Picasso fresh perspective. Picasso's Women of Algeria series is said to be inspired by Mahieddine, although it was painted after the time spent working together. Just as the young Mahieddine's influence on Picasso is evident, his influence is felt in many of her works. Baya married celebrated Andalusian composer Mahieddine Mahfoud in 1953. He's credited with inspiring many of the instruments that appeared in her works, as well as what many people see as the melodious and harmonious atmosphere that her works seems to evoke. 1 year following her marriage to Mahfoud, Baya stopped painting, only returning to her artistic practice in the late 60s. The reasons attributed to this break vary. Some say it was to show solidarity with the revolution in Algeria, others that it was to raise her children. Whatever her reasons, the break was temporary. From the 60s on, she continued to create works until the end of her life. Her rich, opulent paintings combine influences of traditional Algerian art like ceramics and bold wall murals with following figures and objects. Birds and animals combine with objects like instruments and fruit to create works that seem to be laden with symbolic meanings. Her pieces don't follow any rules, continually denying the classification forced onto them. In the late 90s, nearing the end of her successful artistic career, Baya was amongst many Algerian artists that the French colonizers attempted to ascribe to French culture. Instead, she is credited for resolutely proclaiming her Algerian identity, evidenced by her refusal to leave the country during political instability despite an invitation from France. Braving political and social instability, Baya could not bear to leave the home that had inspired her joyous paintings. She was an Algerian artist. At heart, clearly the only personal and artistic classification she was happy with. She died in 1998 and remains a celebrated artistic figure around the world.
Sintonizan Radio Argelia Internacional. El diario hablado.
Señoras, señores, muy cordiales saludos a todos. Actualidad de hoy, elecciones legislativas en Argelia. Según los datos provisionales, la tasa de participación alcanzó el 20,79% en Argelia y el 10,67% en el extranjero. Teherán y Washington concluyen una ronda de negociaciones destinada a poner fin a las hostilidades. El alto comisionado de la ONU para Derechos Humanos lanza una alerta roja frente a la catástrofe en curso en Ubaid, Sudán. Estimados radioescuchas, hola de nuevo. Concluida la jornada electoral de ayer, Argelia entra en la fase de escrutinio a la espera de los resultados provisionales de las elecciones legislativas. Según los datos provisionales facilitados por el presidente interino de la Autoridad Nacional Independiente de las Elecciones, ANIE, Karim Khelfen, la participación alcanzó el 20,79% a nivel nacional y el 10,67% en el extranjero. La ANIE precisó que estas cifras cifras son provisionales y seguirán actualizándose a medida que se reciban las actas de escrutinio procedentes de todas las provincias y de las circunscripciones en el exterior. Escuchemos las precisiones del presidente interino de la ANI, Karim Khalfan.
لا بأس أن نذكر بعدد الهيئة الناخبة 23 مليون و100.
Cabe mencionar que el censo electoral asciende a 23.872.756 electores. El número de votantes alcanzó los 4.962.433, lo que sitúa la participación en el 20,79%. En cuanto a la comunidad nacional residente en el extranjero, el censo electoral es de 854.285 electores, de los cuales 91.170 ejercieron su derecho al voto, lo que representa una participación del 10,67%. Quisiera precisar que estas cifras son provisionales, ya que se basan en las actas de escrutinio recibidas hasta el momento. El proceso de recuento aún no ha concluido y seguimos realizando un seguimiento en tiempo real.
La autoridad electoral anunció que los resultados provisionales se darán a conocer una vez recibido el último acta electoral dentro de un plazo legal de 72 horas. El presidente de la República, Abdelmejid Tebboune, por su lado, saludó el buen desarrollo de las elecciones legislativas que, según afirmó, transcurrieron en buenas condiciones. Asimismo, subrayó que la era de las cuotas y de cualquier menoscabo de la voluntad del pueblo expresada en las urnas ha quedado atrás. En respuesta a las preguntas de los periodistas, tras emitir su voto, el presidente de la República declaró que ningún candidato ni partido denunció fraude ni manipulación electoral.
أعتقد المرحلة هذه تجاوزناها منذ زمان خلاص يعني كل الجزائريات والجزائريين متيقنين باللي مرحلة الكوطا ومرحلة المس بالصوت تاع الشعب انتهى خلاص وهذه تقريبا كل الانتخابات اللي مرت ما سمعناش ولا مترشح ولا حزب ولا يشكي من تزوير ولا من سرقة الأصوات نتاعو. إذا نطمن الناس كل اللي القانون راح يطبق بصفة اللي تخلي كل واحد يخمم مليح قبل ما يخترق القانون.
Y la prensa internacional dedicó una amplia cobertura a las elecciones legislativas celebradas ayer en nuestro país, poniendo el foco en el desarrollo de la jornada electoral, la participación de la diáspora y el peso político de estos comicios. Un resumen a continuación con Kahina Mansri.
En Italia, la agencia ANSA destacó las declaraciones del presidente Abdelmejid Tebboune tras ejercer su derecho al voto, en las que afirmó que la era del fraude y de las cuotas ha terminado, insistiendo en que cualquier infracción del proceso electoral será sancionada por la ley. En España, el diario El Debate subrayó el papel de la comunidad argelina en el extranjero, recordando que cerca de 1 millón de electores están llamados a elegir a los 12 diputados que representarán a la diáspora en la próxima Asamblea Popular argelina. Por su parte, Radio Monte Carlo Internacional informó sobre el desarrollo de la votación y recordó que más de 24 millones de argelinos estaban convocados a las urnas para elegir a los 407 miembros del Parlamento para un mandato de 5 años. La agencia china Xinhua destacó que estas elecciones se celebran en vísperas del 63º aniversario de la independencia, mientras que varios medios árabes, entre ellos Sharq al-Awsat, Sharq News y Middle East Online, pusieron el acento en la organización del proceso electoral y en el regreso de varios partidos de la oposición a la competición política. Por su parte, BBC Arabic analizó la campaña electoral y la movilización de cerca de 10.000 candidatos para convencer al electorado, mientras que en Turquía la agencia Anadolu resaltó la mayor representación de la diáspora y las características del nuevo Parlamento, marcado por un incremento del número de escaños y una mayor presencia de mujeres y jóvenes.
Designado por el presidente de la República, Abdelmejid Tebboune, el ministro de Estado, ministro de Asuntos Exteriores de la Comunidad Nacional en el Extranjero y Asuntos Africanos, Ahmed Attaf, efectúa una visita oficial a la República de Benín. A su llegada a Cotonou, el jefe de la diplomacia argelina se entrevistó con la ministra de Asuntos Exteriores de la República de Benín, Corina Mori-Brunet, con quien abordó el estado de la cooperación bilateral entre ambos países y las perspectivas para fortalecerlas, reafirmando el compromiso compartido de los líderes de ambos países de elevar la asociación argelino-beninesa a niveles superiores, particularmente en los ámbitos de la energía, la agricultura, la industria farmacéutica y la formación. Ambos ministros destacaron la importancia de activar los mecanismos de cooperación bilateral mediante la celebración de la próxima sesión de la Comisión Conjunta o Mixta Argelino-Benina, así como de la primera reunión del Consejo Empresarial, con el fin de impulsar las relaciones económicas, comerciales y de inversión entre ambos países, en consonancia con el potencial y las oportunidades que ofrecen ambas partes. Argelia, representada por la Alta Autoridad para la Transparencia, la Prevención y la Lucha contra la Corrupción, participa en el Foro Internacional Anticorrupción que se celebra en Seúl, Corea del Sur. Durante el foro, Argelia presentó un informe sobre el índice de desempeño de integridad denominado Nazaha, descrito como un mecanismo innovador destinado a fortalecer la transparencia, la integridad y la rendición de cuentas en el sector público, en consonancia con los esfuerzos nacionales para integrar los principios de buena gobernanza y desarrollar herramientas para valorar el desempeño público. La Asociación Internacional de Amigos de la Revolución Argelina organizó en Argel una conferencia sobre los asesinatos y los crímenes cometidos por la Francia colonial contra el pueblo argelino y los amigos de la Revolución Argelina, en particular por la organización terrorista La Mano Roja. Más detalles con Toraya Bujma.
En su intervención con motivo de este acto, el secretario general de la Asociación, Nasser Belkacem, subrayó la necesidad de hacer frente a los intentos de justificar el colonialismo o de defenderlo, concentrándose en las verdades históricas y en la documentación de los crímenes coloniales. Se recordó que este encuentro, que tiene lugar en vísperas de la celebración del 64 aniversario de la independencia de Argelia, tiene como objetivo arrojar luz sobre una de las páginas oscuras de la historia de la Francia colonial, en particular los crímenes de la organización La Mano Roja, utilizada para encubrir operaciones terroristas llevadas a cabo por los servicios de inteligencia francesa contra militantes de la gloriosa Revolución Argelina y de los amigos de la Revolución Argelina, tanto en Argelia como en el extranjero. En este contexto, el secretario general de la citada asociación recordó que dicha organización había asesinado a militantes argelinos y extranjeros en varios países europeos como Alemania, Bélgica, España, Italia y Suiza. Por su lado, el investigador y editor franco-suizo Nils Andersson, uno de los más destacados apoyos internacionales de la Revolución Argelina, quien puso su editorial al servicio del Frente de Liberación Nacional para romper el cerco de la censura francesa, afirmó que las acciones criminales de la Mano Roja fueron responsabilidad directa del Estado francés. Escuchemos la declaración de Nils Andersson, quien fue contactado por nuestro colega del servicio francés Ali Kefsi.
Fue la corriente más extrema dentro del gobierno contra la independencia argelina que organizó esto y forma parte de lo que debe estar dentro de las responsabilidades del Estado francés, que se enmarcan las medidas represivas tomadas, de un elemento fundamental del enfoque de las responsabilidades, del compromiso del Estado para reconocer estas responsabilidades que tiene en el uso de la tortura. La tortura fue teorizada, enseñada, programada y practicada bajo la cobertura del Estado, y tenemos al respecto las pruebas, como Shaban Delmas, quien inauguró el centro de tortura de Arzef.
La citada conferencia contó con testimonios conmovedores de mujahidín e investigadores especializados en este ámbito antes de su clausura, que estuvo marcada por la proyección del documental Main Rouge, Mano Roja, Crímenes de Estado Ocultos.
Y el representante del Frente Polisario en la capital española, Madrid, el Jalil Mohamed Abdelaziz, atribuyó al ocupante marroquí la responsabilidad directa por la persistencia de la catástrofe humanitaria provocada por la proliferación de minas en el Sahara Occidental. Escuchemos los detalles en este informe de Wahiba Miri.
Durante la proyección del cortometraje documental Tanafar, que tuvo lugar en la Sala Constitucional del Congreso de los Diputados español, en un acto organizado por el Grupo Más Madrid, el diplomático saharaui puso de relieve los riesgos continuos que suponen las minas colocadas en el Sahara Occidental y las tragedias humanitarias que provocan entre la población civil saharaui. Jalil Mohamed Abdelaziz explicó que la ocupación marroquí es directamente responsable de que esta tragedia continúe debido a su continua negativa a firmar la Convención de Ottawa sobre la prohibición de las minas antipersona, lo que mantiene al Sahara Occidental entre las zonas más contaminadas por minas y expone a la población civil, especialmente a las mujeres, los niños y los pastores, a un peligro constante que amenaza su vida y su integridad. El diplomático saharaui añadió que esta postura obstaculiza los esfuerzos internacionales destinados a poner fin a las minas y a mitigar sus consecuencias humanitarias, y destacó que miles de saharauis siguen viviendo bajo una amenaza diaria debido a los restos de guerra y al muro militar marroquí rodeado por millones de minas, lo que constituye una flagrante violación de los principios del derecho internacional humanitario.
En Palestina, la tragedia humanitaria continúa agravándose, en particular en la Franja de Gaza. Ayer se cumplieron 1000 días del inicio de la agresión sionista contra el siniestrado enclave, coincidiendo con nuevas agresiones mortíferas. En las últimas 24 horas, al menos 4 palestinos perdieron la vida y otros 15 resultaron heridos en nuevos bombardeos sionistas sobre una tienda de campaña que servía de refugio a una familia desplazada en la zona de Al-Mawazi, al oeste de Khan Yunis, donde varias de las víctimas permanecen en estado grave. Paralelamente, la aviación y la artillería de la ocupación continuaron atacando distintos puntos del enclave. Según la Oficina de Información del Gobierno gazatí, el número de víctimas mortales supera ya los 73.074 palestinos, en su gran mayoría niños y mujeres, mientras que la cifra de heridos rebasa los 173.537 en una crisis humanitaria que sigue deteriorándose día tras día. Entre avances diplomáticos y una situación aún frágil sobre el terreno, Estados Unidos e Irán dieron un nuevo paso en las negociaciones indirectas para reducir las tensiones en Oriente Medio, mientras persisten los desafíos en el estrecho de Hormuz y en la frontera entre el Líbano y la entidad sionista. Detalles con Karina Mansrich.
Representantes de Estados Unidos e Irán concluyeron ayer en Qatar una nueva ronda de negociaciones técnicas e indirectas con el objetivo de consolidar el alto el fuego y avanzar hacia una reducción duradera de las tensiones en Oriente Medio. Las conversaciones forman parte del protocolo de entendimiento firmado el pasado 17 de junio entre Washington y Teherán, que prevé al menos 60 días de negociaciones sobre asuntos clave, entre ellos el estrecho de Hormuz y el programa nuclear iraní. Según la agencia oficial iraní IRNA, las partes alcanzaron un acuerdo que permitirá a Irán utilizar parte de sus fondos congelados en Qatar para adquirir productos considerados esenciales. Además, se aprobó la creación de un canal de comunicación destinado a registrar y comunicar posibles incumplimientos del protocolo. Tanto Qatar como Pakistán, países mediadores, destacaron avances positivos, mientras que el presidente estadounidense Donald Trump calificó las reuniones de muy productivas. Las negociaciones continuarán una vez finalicen los funerales del Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, que comenzarán mañana en Teherán. Las autoridades iraníes prevén una amplia participación ciudadana en unas ceremonias que habían sido aplazadas debido al conflicto. Entre tanto, la situación sobre el terreno sigue siendo delicada El estrecho de Hormuz continúa siendo uno de los principales puntos de fricción, aunque en los últimos días no se han registrado ataques contra buques, persisten las diferencias sobre el control y las condiciones de navegación en esta ruta estratégica para el comercio mundial de hidrocarburos, mientras varios países del Golfo reiteraron su apoyo a la libre circulación marítima. Irán insistió en que el estrecho se encuentra bajo su jurisdicción.
Quedemos en Oriente Medio, precisamente en Siria, que fue escenario de un atentado que dejó nuevas víctimas civiles. Al menos 9 personas murieron y otras 20 resultaron heridas en el atentado perpetrado ayer contra un café situado en las inmediaciones del Palacio de Justicia en el centro de Damasco. Según las autoridades sirias, la explosión fue causada por un artefacto explosivo colocado en el establecimiento, ubicado en una de las zonas más concurridas de la capital. Las fuerzas de seguridad mantienen abierta la investigación para esclarecer las circunstancias del ataque. Tras dicho ataque, la Liga de los Estados Árabes condenó enérgicamente el atentado, expresando sus condolencias a las familias de las víctimas, y la ONU expresó su preocupación y condenó igualmente ese ataque. Pasamos ahora a Sudán. El alto comisionado de las Naciones Unidas para los Derechos Humanos, Volker Turk, advirtió este viernes sobre la catástrofe humanitaria que se está desarrollando en el Ubaid, región del Kordofán en Sudán. Durante la apertura de un debate urgente sobre Sudán en el Consejo de Derechos Humanos en Ginebra, Turk señaló que los civiles siguen sufriendo las consecuencias de los combates entre las fuerzas de apoyo rápido y el ejército sudanés en un conflicto que se prolonga desde abril de 2023. El responsable de la ONU subrayó que las señales que llegan desde Al-Ubaid son claras e inequívocas y advirtió de que se está produciendo una nueva catástrofe en materia de derechos humanos en el país, esta vez en la capital del estratégico estado del Kordofán del Norte. Siempre en Sudán, el embajador argelino ante la ONU en Ginebra, Abdelwahab Lotrash, pidió a la comunidad internacional condenar a los actores externos que, según afirmó, contribuyen a alimentar el conflicto en dicho país. Asimismo, defendió el respeto a la soberanía, la unidad nacional y la integridad territorial de Sudán, rechazando cualquier intento de fragmentar el país y sus instituciones.